Hi everyone, it's Matt Payne here with Matthew Payne Consulting, where we help sales professionals and entrepreneurs like yourself how to very tactically and strategically increase your productivity and performance so that you can see measurable new results fast. And in this video, I'm excited to share with you what specifically today in the 21st century keeps people stuck. What are the key obstacles, barriers, and roadblocks that really prevent people from succeeding and achieving? And what specifically are the systems and strategies that you and I can implement to bypass these variables where we not only performing at a higher level, but we actually increase the speed at which we succeed. And by the way, I just want to thank all of you for your posts, your comments, your feedback. I'm overwhelmed with excitement from just the sheer volume of people who've reached out to me, telling me how that first video and the tools and the resources that we gave you has really increased and helped you to increase your productivity and your performance. So thank you for that. I think you and I must be cast from the same mold in the sense that like you, I'm constantly learning, growing, and taking in new ideas and new information to really get the edge in life and in my business and in my personal life. So in that spirit, I want you to know we're going to continue to send you out these kind of video resources, these tools and distinctions that you can apply in your business and your personal life. So thank you for that. The other thing that we're going to cover today is we're going to talk about what are the key obstacles that you might be facing with your customers. Why don't they buy? Why do they say no? What's maybe missing in your message of communication? And how can you get them to say yes more often? How can you become more persuasive and attractive with your ability to communicate other people so that they not only buy, but you lead them, you influence their thoughts in a specific direction, and you're able to do all of that in a very non-pushy, non-invasive way. I call it influence without selling. I think you're going to find it invaluable today. It's going to be very strategic and tactical, this video and its approach. It's going to be a powerful training. But before we dive into some new content, let's very quickly do a quick review and recap of what we covered in the first video. If you remember in the first video, we talked about all high-performing, exemplary leaders, entrepreneurs, sales professionals. They get control of three variables that allow them to produce extraordinary results in the moment. And we learned that it's these three variables, they're always intimately affecting our productivity and success in the moment. And that when you and I focus on these variables and we make changes or shifts within them, you and I, we can see massive increases, geometric increases in our productivity. And not only that, we can accelerate the speed at which we succeed. And we actually see this happening with other people in other industries, where there's always one or a few rare individuals that are producing, earning, selling 10 times more than somebody else. And yet if you look at these people, they're not working 10 times harder. They don't have 10 times the intelligence or skill. And the reason is because they know what to focus on throughout their day, and they have superior strategies within these variables. So in the first video, if you remember, we focused primarily on the first variable, which was psychology. And we said that it's really our psychology is critical, but that all men and women that we revere, leaders, have an extraordinary psychology. That's what gives them the capacity to lead and follow through consistently. I like to call it an extraordinary philosophy of life. In other words, these people, anything that life throws at them, their life philosophy is such in a way where they can evaluate experiences that cause them to feel good, follow through, and consistently behave in a way that moves them closer to whatever it is they want. They expect to succeed in any endeavor, regardless of what the environment might be reinforcing in the moment. They can think beyond it. And because they have this expectancy, this high level of expectancy, they consistently and congruently follow through. They've learned to master and control their mind rather than having their mind control and master them. And we said that's critical because it's really in our mind that we experience life. That our mind runs the show. Without our minds, we're vegetables. The mind is the governing aspect of our life. And so in the first video, we learned that we actually have two minds. There's our conscious mind, and then there's our unconscious mind. And we learned that about 95% of what we do now throughout the day, 95% is carried out and controlled by this unconscious mind of ours. And that many times the challenges that we face in our life is when these two minds are in conflict with one another rather than working in cooperation. I remember I told you how before that 95%, not only 95% of what we do throughout the day is unconscious, but whenever your conscious goals or intentions, whatever it is you want, any change that you want to make, any goal that you want to achieve, whether it's doubling your sales or tripling your sales or producing a result, is in conflict with your unconscious feelings. that unconscious mind is going to pull you backwards. So I gave you some tools and distinctions on how to increase your level of expectancy. I gave you some questions that you can answer to get these two minds working in cooperation and increase what we call your expectancy factor, which is really just a score, and how you rate yourself on a scale of 0 to 10 is where your level of expectancy is prior to taking on that goal and challenge, because we learned that expectancy and congruency is everything today. So if you didn't have a chance to watch that video, please, after you're done with this, go back and watch that video. I think you'll find it invaluable in just understanding and discovering the power of the potential that you have inside with your mind and body. And it'll answer two questions for you. Question number one is it will answer the question, how do I tap more of my potential? And the second question it will answer is, how do I get myself, how do I train my mind and body to do habitually what I understand intellectually? Today, what I want to move into now is I want to focus on the final two variables here. And I want to talk about what are some strategies and systems that you and I can immediately implement within these variables so that we're not only efficient and effective, but we increase the speed at which we succeed. I think you're really going to like this. So let me ask you a question. Today in the 21st century, what do you think is the number one cause of failure or underperformance today amongst professionals? Now, we know that our psychology, our expectancy factor, plays a critical role in this. But what I really am talking about is, aside from our psychology, operationally, in the moment, in the day-to-day, why do people fail? And it can always be traced back to this: poor time management, or what I call poor time strategization. In other words, the use of their time is dreadful. They're not doing things that are results-driven, goal-achieving, that are moving them in the direction that they want. Now, why does this happen? One of the reasons I believe, as simple as it sounds, is people today just do not understand how vitally precious and important time management is to the quality of their life and their productivity in business. So once again, let's ask the question, what is time and what does it really mean to you and I? Time is the capital. It's the currency of our life. It's the stuff that makes up our life. And what I found is that when you and I strategically take advantage of it and we invest it wisely, we can turn things around very, very rapidly. See, all leaders and achievers put an extremely high value on their time because they know it's the one thing that they can't get back in life. Time is non-refundable. When it's gone, it's gone. So let me ask you a question. Tell me if you agree with this statement, but if we can't effectively manage our time, we really can't manage our life. And if we can't manage our life, we can't effectively manage anything within that, be it our business, our relationships, our family, our health, our energy. So time management is really life management. Time management allows you and I to get control of the activities and the circumstances of our life so that we move it ultimately in the direction that we want to go, because if you're a good time manager, you're always asking the question, is this the most valuable use of my time right now, and where am I spending my time? Is what I'm doing a goal-achieving activity? Is it results-driven? And if it isn't, I'm going to stop doing it and do something of higher value. Does that make sense to you? But you know what's interesting? What's kind of funny is this whole concept of what I'm talking about, time management, is kind of a play on words, isn't it? Because you and I, we really can't manage time. We can't save time. We can't stop the sands in the hourglass from falling, right? Time is immutable. It's fixed. When it's gone, it's gone. So what I found is that what we really need to learn to do is not manage time per se. We have to manage whom? We have to manage ourselves. We have to manage the actions that we take, the moves that we make. We have to manage the activities within our time so that everything that we do is purposeful in nature and ultimately leads us in the direction that we want to go. Now, how do we do that today? We have to have successful systems for living. Systems for living that allow us to organize and manage the activities within our time in a way that create a feeling of control in us. Systems for living that create congruent behavior so that we expect to succeed. Systems for living that create consistent action and follow through on the things that are most important to us. And I believe today people fail in the 21st century because they don't have systems for living. They don't have systems that allow them to organize their activities and their business in a way so that they're in control, so that they can discern and decipher what's more important and what's less important. See, I want your opinion on this, but today in the 21st century, would you agree that life is happening pretty fast? Did you know that you make more life-changing decisions in 6 months to a year than your grandparents made in a lifetime? So we are constantly being assaulted with information. Technology, the speed of change is happening at blind speed today. I mean, it's at a blinding rate. And we have interruptions, distractions, emails, text messages. We have other people's demands, urgencies, distractions. All of this comes at us. Does it make sense to you if we don't have some sort of system to organize it all? And really filter out the relevant from the irrelevant, we're going to drown in the minutia of interruptions, distractions, urgencies, and other people's demands. Does that make sense? So how do we do this? What are the systems that you and I can immediately implement to not only increase our effectiveness, but increase the speed at which we succeed? Well, therein lies what I call the success leadership blueprint. We need to have a formula, a blueprint, a step-by-step process that you and I can follow so that anything that we take on, it increases our effectiveness and our efficiency at what we do. We have to have a formula or a step-by-step process that we follow that creates inside of us a level of expectancy and control so we can get control over the circumstances or the situation. So let me give you this blueprint right now. I think you're really going to like it. The first step in the leadership blueprint is to know your vision. Know your vision. You know, there's a really good book out there today. It's been on the bestseller list since the beginning of time. It's called the Bible. And it says that without a vision, you and I, we what? We perish. We all have to have a compelling vision for every area of our life, a vision that excites us, that gets us up early in the morning and keeps us up late at night. And as basic and as simple as that sounds, so many people today don't have clear, specific written goals for each area of their life. They don't have a vision that really excites them. Still today, I read this, I can't remember where I read it. I read it somewhere online. Less than 2% of the American population has clear, specific written goals with plans on how to achieve them. And everybody else works for them. So it's important that you and I literally have a clear, specific written vision for that area of our life. And let me explain why this is so critical. Because neurologically, in your brain, psychologically, you have to understand a little bit about how your mind works. That today, in this fast-paced, busy, hectic society that we live in today, our senses are constantly being bombarded and assaulted with 2 million bits and pieces of information. And actually, that, according to most neurobiologists, that 2 million number is conservative. A lot of other neurobiologists think it's much, much greater. But let's just say it's 2 million bits and pieces of information. So think about that. Every single second, your senses get assaulted with 2 million bits and pieces of information. Now, if you were to consciously take all of that information in, you would go insane. It would be information overload. So what happens is our unconscious mind filters out most of that information. We don't even pay attention to it. Now think about this. Out of 2 million bits and pieces of information coming at you moment by moment by moment, how much do you actually think you pay attention to? You know what it is? It's 134 bits. That's a very small band of information that you could be noticing and paying attention to. But here's what's interesting. When you write something down, and you get clear and specific on what you want, and you know why you want it, and you capture it on paper, you activate this part of your brain at the unconscious mind called your reticular cortex. And it works very much like a mechanism in a missile. And it locks on that thing that you want. So anything that has anything to do with what it is you want, many times this is unconscious, outside your conscious awareness. Your unconscious mind now, this reticular cortex, starts to move you in that direction. It starts to coordinate your desires, your attitudes, your beliefs, your values to be consistent with that so it can achieve it, so you can actually make it happen. And you know what? I'll give you a great example of this. Has this ever happened to you before? Have you ever gotten clear on something that you wanted? And maybe you didn't even write it down, but you just knew what it was that you wanted, whether it was a car, an outfit, a pair of shoes. And all of a sudden, once you got clear on what you wanted and you were specific, you started to notice that car or that outfit or that pair of shoes everywhere. Has that ever happened to you before? Of course, we've all had this experience. Now, here's my question for you. Was that car, outfit, pair of shoes, whatever it is that you wanted that you started to notice, was it always out there, yes or no? Of course it was, but you didn't notice it because you didn't activate this part of your brain called your reticular cortex. And I'm here to tell you that when you write something down and you get a vision that excites you for that area of your life, it opens up a whole new awareness and a whole new reality. Think about it. I mean, think of your mind as very much like a search engine, okay? There's all this information on the World Wide Web, right? But if we go into Google and we type in wealth and abundance, And that's locked on from our reticular cortex in the search engine of our mind. What's going to show up in the screen of our reality? What are we going to notice? Everything that relates to that. So it's critical for you to get a vision for that area of your life and write it down, because that will drive you and it will activate this part of your brain called the reticular cortex. The other problem is this. I notice that a lot of people, and this seems so basic, I understand that, but a lot of people that I meet is they're not clear on what it is they want. Would you agree it's going to be very difficult for you and I to hit a target in life if we're not clear on what it is we want? And once we write that down and we're clear and we're specific, we've empowered ourselves. See, many times what people do, when I meet people that are frustrated or sometimes even depressed, not always, but a lot of the times it's because they don't have a vision that excites them. They don't have a vision that drives them. They don't know what they want. They don't have a vision for their body. They don't have a vision for their income. They don't have a vision for their business or their marriage or their relationships. So it's almost as if they're vague, they're fuzzy, and they're unclear. And you know what they usually talk about? What they don't want. They talk about, well, I don't want to be in this relationship. I don't want to have this body anymore. I don't want to feel like heck anymore. I don't want this. And you have to understand how your mind works. Your unconscious mind can't negate things. Your conscious mind can, but your unconscious mind can't negate things. So if I were to say to you right now, don't think of the color blue. Don't think of the color blue. Whatever you do, don't think of the color blue. More than likely, now maybe you pictured the blue azure ocean, but more than likely, where did your focus go? It goes towards, so we can't think about what we don't want to think about without first having to think about it. There's something to think about. Anyway, we're going to talk about this. When we talk about hypnotic language in the next video, a little preview, it can be very powerful in being able to influence people. But just know that your brain can't negate things. So it's critical for you to be clear and specific and write things down. The starting point of activating your potential, the genesis to igniting your potential is desire. It's getting clear on what it is you want. Motivation requires motive. So be clear and specific. That's step number one. As basic as that is, I understand, but a lot of people, less than 2% of the American population, don't have clear, specific written goals and visions for each area of their life. Enough said. Okay, let's move to the next one. Next one, number two, is this. Know your purpose. Know your purpose. Please remember this phrase. Purpose is always going to be stronger than outcome. You and I, we can achieve any what in life if we get a strong enough why, if we get a strong enough purpose. Purpose creates passion, and passion creates inspiration and enthusiasm. See, would you agree there's a big difference between being motivated and being inspired? Many times when people are motivated, they're achieving to be happy. Isn't that true? They're working really hard and they're achieving to experience some sort of happiness. But when you're inspired, you're happily achieving. There's a big, big difference. And purpose, understanding your purpose, understanding why do I want this? What will this give me? Understanding the reasons as to why you want it. See, I want your opinion on this, but if you write down 25 reasons as to why you absolutely have to have something, reasons that are consistent with your values, reasons that are consistent with who you want to become, what you want to be, do, or have in that area, and you write down those reason after reason after reason, would you agree that has to ramp up some drive? That has to ramp up your enthusiasm. There's no question about it. So writing down your purpose, after you get clear and specific, you want to write down purposefully, what will this give me? How will this make me feel? If I had this in my life right now, what would it do for my self-esteem? What would it do for my family? What would it give me? What difference could this make in your life? See, I want your opinion on this, but what's the difference between work and play? What's the difference between work and play? And maybe people say, well, work is something that I got to do. Play is something that I get to do. The only difference between work and play is the emotion or the purpose that you associate to the activity. See, remember this phrase, doing things without understanding your purpose will drain you emotionally. When we don't associate a high degree of importance to something, or we don't think it's unique, or we don't feel a sense of enthusiasm, do we get bored? Does it wear us out emotionally? Absolutely. But when you understand why this is important and it's consistent with your values and you have purpose, it creates drive. Remember, purpose creates enthusiasm. Let's go on to the next one. Step number 3 is this. After you have your vision, you know your purpose, you know why you want it. The next one is to this. Know your time frame. Know your time frame. Now this is key. The key here is to set a deadline. Anytime you write down your vision, your goal, or your objective, whatever you want to call it, you want to set a specific deadline. Because the reason is that a deadline acts as an unconscious forcing system. And a lot of people say to me all the time, well, yeah, Matt, what if I set a deadline and I don't achieve it by the date? That's okay. Just set the deadline back. Always remember this phrase. There's no such thing as an unrealistic goal, only unrealistic deadlines. But a goal or an objective without a deadline, it's a wish. It's a fantasy. I've studied this extensively, that when you write something down and you write down a date as to when you want to achieve it by, your chances for achieving the goal increase geometrically. Now here's another thing that I suggest to my clients, and I want to suggest it to you too. Set 3 to 6 month deadlines. Because I believe that we should constantly be checking in with our goals. I have my clients write down their goals every single day. I have them write down their top 12 or 13 goals or 10 goals on a blank sheet of paper every single morning. So they're always on the top of their mind. They're always thinking about their goals. Because think about it. If you write down your goals every single morning, you wake up, it'll take you 4 minutes to do. And the first thing you do when you get up in the morning, and part of your ritual of getting up in the morning is writing down your top 10 goals. What do you think your chances are going to be of achieving your goal when you're always thinking about it? See, it's been said that we become what we think about most of the time. The average person has 65,000 thoughts in a day. You know what the problem is though? The average person, those thoughts, those 65,000 thoughts are the same thoughts that they had yesterday and the day before and the day before. But when you write something down and you get clear and you write down a specific deadline, it acts as a forcing system. So how do we do that? How do we really write down our goals? What's the best way to do that? Well, I like to teach people a formula that I do that changed my life. Such a simple way to write down your goals so that you activate this unconscious forcing system with a deadline and you activate all your senses. See, let me ask you a question, but do you ever notice that when you focus on something, it affects how you feel? But do you notice that when you not only focus on something, but how you focus on something drastically affects the way you feel? Absolutely. So let me give you the way I like to teach people to write down goals. You want to write down your goals in this specific way. Today is, so there's the deadline, I am now here, I feel blank. So if you want to achieve a certain level of income, you want to write down the date that you've achieved that level of income, and then you want to say, today is this date, I am now here looking at my bank account, I am now here receiving this award, I feel, this is key, I feel so proud, I feel so good, I feel so joyous, I feel so happy. And if you write that down, now people say, oh, come on, what's the big deal? Here's the key. The key is this. Remember how we talked about 95% of what we think, feel, and do throughout the day is going to be carried out and controlled by our unconscious mind? Do you remember how I told you that each mind has its own unique language? The language of the unconscious mind is what? Feeling. Feeling. Your unconscious mind is your body mind. So it's if feeling influences the unconscious mind, and the unconscious mind doesn't know the difference between something that we vividly imagine and something that we've actually experienced, and neurologically we form the identical connections in our mind when we vividly imagine as opposed to actually doing, then do we want to activate emotionally inside of us that feeling, yes or no? Absolutely. It's critical. Today is, I am now here. So you're thinking from the end in mind. You're seeing what you'd see if you were already in the goal, if you were already in the vision, right? And then you want to say, I feel so what? Because what you're doing is you're training your mind and body to get ahead of the experience. Does that make sense? You're training your mind and body to literally become a map into your future rather than a blueprint of your past. So I'm not trying to be overly technical here and overly specific, but this is critical. When I've done this in my own life and I've done it with other people, the results are astounding. Try it on. Try it on and see what you think. So step number 4 is know your plan. Know your plan. Now, a lot of times people get overwhelmed when they think, oh my gosh, how do I create a plan? All a plan really is a list of activities that you prioritize in order. And the way you plan anything, the way that you can develop a plan is you ask yourself this question. Write this down if you're taking notes or just remember it. What specifically has to happen for me to achieve this? What specifically has to happen for me to achieve this? And then you say, okay, if that has to happen, what else has to happen? What else has to happen? What else has to happen? And there's a very specific, simple step process that you can do to plan anyone. Step number 1 is this: capture or brainstorm. You just want to get it all out on paper. So you write down what specifically has to happen for me to achieve this goal. And you just brainstorm every possible idea that you could think of. I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. What else has to happen? I need to do this. What else has to happen? I need to do this. And you just get it out on paper. And when you do this, what this is going to do is it's going to give you a tremendous sense of control. Because a lot of times if we're overwhelmed, the reason is because we're over-chunked in our mind, where we think about this activity and there's so much to do because we're trying to manage it and organize it in our head, in our brain, and it creates a sense of just overwhelm. But I found that when you get it down on paper, it gives you a tremendous sense of control. All professionals think on paper. In fact, planning is really the detailed form of thinking on paper. Planning gives you a sense of control over what you're doing because it forces you to be very strategic and anticipate and think ahead of what you need to do. And that leads me into step number 2 of planning. Step number 1 was capture. Get it on paper. Brainstorm it out. Step number 2 is you prioritize. You ask yourself, out of all these steps, what's most important? What's the first thing that I need to do? What's the second need that I think to do? And you prioritize in order of importance. And then the step number 3 to planning is this. This is key. Schedule it. Schedule it. Remember this phrase, what you schedule gets done, but if you don't schedule it, chances are you're probably not going to do it. Let me say that again. What you schedule gets done, but if you don't schedule it, you're probably not going to do it. So planning is critical. In fact, let me give you some questions that you can ask yourself to really get you focused and concentrated on what is most important throughout the day. If you're taking notes, you might want to write these down. Question number 1 is this. What's the most extraordinary expression of myself today? What's the most extraordinary expression of myself today? If I could be, do, or have anything, what is the ultimate me today? What is the idealized version of myself today? What's the most extraordinary expression of myself today? Question number 2 is this. What specifically is most important for me to achieve today? What specifically is most important for me to achieve today? What are my top, most important, most valuable priorities that I need to achieve today? Number 2, what specifically is most important for me to achieve today? Question number 3, what accomplishments will have the greatest impact on my business today when I achieve them? What accomplishments will have the greatest impact on my business today when I achieve them? Question number 4, how do I want to show up today to other people? How do I want to show up? What's my level of engagement? What's my level of presence or enthusiasm? What's my overall demeanor like? How do I want to show up to other people today? And question number 5 is this, what emotions do I want to cultivate and feel throughout the day? What emotions do I want to cultivate and feel throughout the day? See, tell me if you agree with this statement, but maybe other than our connection with our Creator, is there anything more important than how you feel? How you feel is your life. So the average person has, in the English language, there's about, I think I've read this somewhere, there's about 7,000 different words to describe certain emotions. And the average person has less than 12 emotions that they experience throughout the week, and half of those make them feel horrible. And I really believe it's because they haven't made a conscious decision to decide what emotions they want to feel. Let me ask you this question. What emotions, if you cultivated them and created them in your life, would drive you to greater levels of success? What emotions, if you cultivated them and created them in your life, would drive you to greater levels of success? See, I have a question for you. Does how you feel affect what you do? When you feel really good, when you feel enthusiastic, when you feel strong, when you feel confident, when you feel excited, does that affect your behavior, yes or no? Does it affect how you communicate with other people? When you're relaxed, when you're feeling kind of enthusiastic, when you're relaxed, when you're indifferent, does that affect how people communicate with you? Can people sense neediness or desperation? Can they sense if you're thinking in your mind, I hope I get this, I hope I make this happen? Can they pick it up non-verbally? Absolutely. So how you feel, feeling affects our behavior. So when you ask yourself this question, wait a minute here, what emotions do I want to cultivate and feel throughout my day? And you write those emotions down, and you put your attention there, and you put your focus on, and you ask yourself this question, what would I have to pay attention to? What would I have to think about? What would I have to focus on? That's going to create some enthusiasm in you. It's going to create some drive. It's going to create a different state of mind in you. And that leads me into step number 5. Step number 5, and this is a biggie. Step number 5 is this: know your obstacles. Know your obstacles. And most people don't do this. Most people don't anticipate and think ahead of, what are the barriers that would prevent me from succeeding? In fact, you might want to write this question down or just remember it. If there was a thought, a feeling, or a behavior that was limiting me, that would prevent me from achieving this goal, what would it or could it be? Let me say that again. If there was a thought, feeling, or behavior that would prevent me from achieving my goal, what would it or could it be? And then remember this or write it down. How can I create an environment that is conducive for me to achieve my goal? What can I do in my environment? What can I change in my environment? What can I create in my environment that would really give me an advantage in achieving the goal, that would be conducive for me to achieve the goal? Maybe some of that is just cleaning and organizing your workspace. That gives you a sense of control. But I want to ask you a question. You ever notice that there are certain environments that can trigger us to feel a certain way, or certain people that can trigger us to feel a certain way, or even certain times of the day where it's almost as if we've lost our edge, we've lost that passion, we've lost that enthusiasm, we're stuck. Have you ever been there before? And it's kind of difficult to get back into that zone, that optimal state of mind. Have you ever been there before? Well, I want to give you a very kind of outrageous way to unstick yourself in a sense. And this is based on classic neurolinguistics, but I call these distraction, disruption, and scrambling techniques. And it's based on this whole mind-body connection. Basically, what the mind-body connection is what you think you feel and what you feel you think. And sometimes it's very difficult for us to think ourselves back into creativity, or think ourselves back into confidence or enthusiasm or drive or focus, because we're in a lousy state of mind. We're stuck there. So anything that you can do to distract yourself, to jolt yourself, to disrupt whatever's going on inside of your head, as crazy as it sounds, it works. So one of the things that I teach my clients to do is that if they're ever stuck, or they're feeling bad, or they're feeling like they want to procrastinate, or they're not creative, they can't get back there and they don't know why, or they're feeling tired or whatever, I have them do this. I have them jump up and down and say, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy. And as crazy as it sounds, people will look at you and they'll say, you're crazy, you're crazy, you're crazy. But here's my point. My point is this: as outrageous as that is, it works. It works. Try it right now. Go, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy. As crazy as that sounds, what it will do is it will change your state of mind, because it jolts you out of a certain frame of mind. See, whenever you think a thought, you make a chemical in your mind. And that chemical makes you feel equal to how you're thinking. But when you engage your body and you do something radical like that, it jolts you, it distracts you, or it disrupts you out of that patterned way of thinking. This is classic neurolinguistics. It's so simple, but it works. Try it on for size. The next time you're feeling just kind of tired, or you're feeling like you don't want to do it, jump up and down and try that. I promise you it will work. Give it a try. Now, the other thing is this. Here's what I found. Many times what we can do is there are certain times throughout the day that we are more susceptible to certain urges in our environment. I'll give you an example from my own life. When I used to be heavy and overweight, I would find that I would eat when I wasn't even hungry. And I would eat because I was stressed. They actually had a term for it. It was called grazing. But I found that right when I got off work, the urge for me to overeat, the urge for me to eat something was incredibly high. So I had about a 2-minute window. These are called crucial moments, when that urge was high. And so what I did was I set my running shoes right next to the door. I threw my bag to the side. I changed in less than a minute, pretty fast, and I got out of the house. And by doing that, what it did is that crucial moment, it changed my focus. It distracted my focus, and I felt different. Please remember this, that what you think about, you're going to feel. Whatever you put your attention on, whatever's going on inside of your head, and a lot of this is unconscious, it's going to feel. So these distraction techniques are critical. So step number 5 is create an environment to review. It's to create an environment that's conducive for changing and noticing in advance, hey, if there's a thought, if there's a limiting emotion or a limiting behavior or a bad habit that would prevent me from following through, that maybe would cause me to procrastinate, what can I do to jolt myself? What can I do very quickly to disrupt that, scramble it, or distract myself? And as silly as it sounds, it works. Let's go on to the other one. Step number 6 is this. This is key. Get in the zone. Get in the zone. What do I mean by get into the zone? This means operating from a posture and a psychology of optimal performance. Now, we touched on this earlier, but this is based on the mind-body connection. And the mind-body connection is based on this, is that what you think about, you feel, and what you feel influences your thought process. Let me explain what my point here, but when you experience something in your mind, or you make a thought, do you feel it in the reservoir of your body? Absolutely. Now, when you feel something in the reservoir of your body, does that in turn influence the images that you make in your mind, or does it affect your thought life? Yes or no? Absolutely. So every time you think a thought, you make a chemical. And those chemicals in your body cause you to think equal to how you're feeling. So what can happen is we get in this loop of thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking and thinking and feeling and feeling and thinking. And what can begin to happen is that feelings can literally become the means of thinking for us. For example, do you ever notice that when you're anxious or you're worried, does that affect your perspective in life? Yeah, when you're anxious and you're worried, you ever notice that your, quote, problems in life seem a lot more overwhelming and daunting? But conversely, when you feel confident, when you feel enthusiastic, when you feel alive, vibrant, and strong, do you notice that your problems just don't seem as challenging? Absolutely. So how you feel affects what you do. So one of the ways to change the way you feel very quickly is change your posture. I mean, this is so simple. This is so third grade, right? This is so basic. But if I said to you right now, there's a person behind, you can't see him, behind this wall right here, and you can't see him. But if I said to you, they are incredibly successful. This person, you know, they're a multi-millionaire. They're passionate. They're just one of those people that when you meet them, you like them. They're real. They're sincere. They're transparent. Now, you can't see them, but if I said, I'll give you $1,000 if you can describe accurately how they carry themselves. You can't see them, but could you take a pretty good guess at how they carry themselves, yes or no? Of course you could. I mean, where are their shoulders? Their shoulders are back. Their posture's up. They lean in more. What's their face like? Are they more animated? You know, is there a level of just passion? Is there a level of presence? Now, how do you know this? Because we do this. We do this every single day. So it's critical to understand, you know, it's critical to kind of evaluate and say, you know, how am I showing up today? What's my level of engagement? On a scale of 0 to 10, and if you change the way you use your posture, I call these patterns of posture, it will radically affect the way you feel. See, remember this phrase, it's so much easier to act your way into feeling than feel your way into acting. I mean, isn't that really true? Sometimes it's difficult to think ourselves into a resourceful state, but if we change our posture, you know, do me a favor right now, but can you remember a time when you felt proud, strong, and confident? Think of a time when you felt proud, strong, and confident. And do me a favor, stand the way you were standing back then, breathe the way you were breathing back then, and kind of put the look on your face that you had back then when you felt really strong, proud, and confident. Now, and just notice how that posture is maybe different than where you were before. Now, what I want you to do is, without changing any aspect of your body, just your posture, holding that posture right now, eyes up, going like, okay, yeah, eyes up, doing that right now, I want you to try to get afraid. Try to feel depressed. Try to feel fear. Try to feel anxious or worried when your posture is engaged like this. And you can't do it. Because what happens is your posture is sending a different signal to your brain based on the mind-body connection. Simple as it sounds, it works. Do athletes know this, yes or no? Do performers know this, yes or no? Do real professionals know how to engage their body in a way that turns on circuits in their mind, yes or no? You better believe it. Isn't our life as important as theirs? Watch your posture. The next thing is change your psychology. This is based on this. Remember I gave you that formula, T times E equals R? Thought times emotion becomes our reality. People that get what they want are very good at putting their attention on what they want and off of what they don't want. My teacher taught me this way back when. He said, once you realize that what you think about habitually starts to show up in your life continuously, you just get real careful about what you think about. You don't allow your thoughts and your attention to go to things that you don't want to experience. See, think of it like this. Your thoughts will affect how you feel just assuredly as baby ducks follow their mother. So the best way to describe it is like this. Your thoughts follow your your emotions follow your thoughts just assuredly as baby ducks follow their mother. So it's critical to always be aware of, what am I thinking about? What am I focusing on? What am I putting my attention on? And is this constructive or is it destructive to the quality of my life? Remember this phrase, all wisdom is avoiding thoughts that weaken you. It's avoiding thoughts that are negative. It's avoiding things that you don't want to think about. So now that we're in the zone, we're in this optimal state of mind, we need to take immediate, that's step 7, take immediate action. Do something, do anything. But I remember hearing years ago, never leave the sight of a goal without taking a step towards its ultimate fulfillment. So we want to take immediate action in our plan for achieving our goal. You have to realize, remember that phrase in physics, the law of physics, that says a body in motion tends to stay in motion unless acted on by an outside force? Any action that you take, even if it seems small, even if it seems little, will create momentum. And the hardest part about momentum is just getting it started. So when you take an action, when you make a phone call, you send an email, you reach out to somebody, you get moving. You get that energy, you get that momentum, you get what we call the big mo, and it starts to move you in the direction that ultimately you want. And then after that, you take action. You always want to be, the final step is measuring. Remember this phrase, you can't effectively manage what you're not consistently measuring. One of the reasons is because constant measuring gives you feedback. It allows you to calibrate and change your approach and understand tactically, is what I'm doing moving me in the direction that I want? And if it isn't, let me change my approach. But when you're constantly measuring, precisely, acutely discerning and deciphering, are you getting closer to your goal? Are you getting further away? It allows you also to not only measure, but it gives you a sense of progress. You can notice whether or not what you're doing is working. And if it isn't, you can change your approach. But when you're constantly measuring, it allows you to kind of score yourself. And you can see that the progress that you can see the progress that you're making. So it's critical for you to constantly be measuring. If you're constantly measuring, you're effectively managing. So this is the leadership blueprint. These are the steps that we have. But after we have this formula, these steps, it's critical for you and I to discover where we're spending our time and how much of our time we're actually spending there. Because let me ask you, have you ever had a day or maybe a week where you've worked incredibly hard, you've expended all this time, all this effort, all this energy, and you look back at your results, you look back at your rewards, you look at your paycheck, and you say, is this it? Is this all there is? Why does that happen? And it happens because decisions and priorities. Decisions and priorities. See, I want your opinion on this, because is it fair to say that ultimately the results that we get in our life are really going to come down to the actions that we take? The actions that we take are really going to come down to the decisions that we make in the moment, and the decisions that we make are going to come down to the priorities that we've set in that moment. So really the key to all time management and strategization is our ability to set priorities on our time. But for you and I to effectively set priorities on our time, we first have to understand where we're spending our time and how much of our time we're spending there and what we're doing with our time. Once again, we can't save time. We can't manage time. What we have to really do is get control of the circumstances or the activities within our time. And what we have to do is we have to take inventory of how much time we're spending there. And this is going to tie in brilliantly to what I want to talk about right now. Something that we call the time matrix. So let's move into the time matrix. So do you remember how earlier we talked about that you and I, we really can't manage time? We can't stop the sands in the hourglass from falling. Time is fixed. It's immutable. It passes by at a constant rate. So what we really have to do is not attempt to manage time. We have to manage ourselves. We have to manage the moves and the actions that we take, the activities that take up our time, so that everything is strategic and purposeful and ultimately leads us in the direction that we want to go. Now, why is this important to you and I? What are the payoffs of effective time utilization or time strategization? Well, let me ask you a question. What would it mean to the quality of your life if you had an extra 2 hours free time per day? You literally could increase your productivity conservatively by 35%, and that's a very conservative number. You felt a greater sense of control over your business and your environment. Your self-esteem and your self-efficacy was increased drastically, and you were able to reduce the stress by 50%. And not only that, you were just a much more pleasant person to be around because you weren't stressed out a lot. Your kids and your family are going to love you. I mean, just the free time alone. What would you do, honestly, with an extra 2 hours free time per day? Over the course of the year, that translates into 3 extra months. What would you do with all of that time? Well, for you and I to get more time, the first thing we have to do is free it up. We have to discover where we're spending our time. What specifically are we doing with our time? Are we investing it or are we squandering it? What are the activities that are taking up our time right now, and what are the consequences to those activities? See, remember this. All leaders can focus and concentrate on the most important activities that are fulfilling them and give them the greatest return on their time. And I think there's 3 activities that really make up our time. These are the 3 activities that really make up what we do throughout the day. There's essential activities, there's non-essential activities, and then there's growth activities. Let me explain these very quickly. Essential activities are critical, vital, they're results driven, they have positive consequences to the quality of our life or our business. Non-essential activities are just that. They're non-essential. They're somewhat unnecessary and needless. They don't really have any short-term or long-term benefits. They might feel good for the moment, but they're not really moving us in the direction of our ultimate vision and our ultimate goals. And then growth activities. These are things that we do that have significant long and short-term benefits. Consequences to the quality of our business and our life. If you're in business, these are things that you can do, restructuring your business, re-engineering your business where you can triple your income. They have long and short-term lasting positive consequences to the quality of our life. Another way that we can evaluate our time is based on a model called urgency versus importance. In other words, this is based on what do we do? Do we do things that are urgent, that are in our face, that are demanding our attention right now? Or do we do things that are important? Or do we do some sort of variation of these two? And this ties in brilliantly to the time matrix here, which is really what I want to talk about. The time matrix is going to reveal to us where we're spending our time right now. And that's absolutely critical because a lot of people are in the dark about where they're spending their time and how much time they're actually spending there. So if you look at the time matrix here, each one of these boxes is actually a quadrant. And within each quadrant, everything that we do throughout our day will fall into one or all of these, or some variation of all of these quadrants. So this will give us absolute clarity on where we're spending our time and how much time we're actually spending there. So let's move into these quadrants. Quadrant 1 right here is doing things. These are things that we do throughout our day that are not urgent and not important. I call these tension relieving activities. These are things that we do that feel good in the moment, but they don't really have any long or short-term consequences, positive consequences to the quality of our life. This could be watching television, reading magazines, idle conversations, surfing the internet, text messaging, things like that. Things that feel good for the moment, but they're not really moving us in the direction of our goals. A lot of people will do these things. I call this, by the way, the quadrant of escape, because a lot of people they indulge in these kind of activities to get out of stress. In other words, they're stressed out. They've worked a hard day. They just want to check out. I mean, they just want to escape. So many times they'll do things to distract themselves, to just check out. These are mind-numbing activities. And what I found is, a little bit of this is okay. I mean, who doesn't like to watch a television show every now and then? Or go to the movies or read a magazine? We all like to do that. A little bit of that is okay. But wouldn't you agree, if we're spending a disproportionate amount of our day escaping, you and I, we really can't have a level of passion, a level of enthusiasm, a quality of life, and we're certainly not going to be productive if we're spending a disproportionate amount of our time escaping, or if we're living vicariously through a television set. See, one of the things that I've learned about personal effectiveness and just joy and fulfillment is that as people, we tend to feel most fulfilled when we're doing things, when we're actively engaged as opposed to being passive. In other words, when all of your senses are engaged and you're an active participant in something where you're using your mental, intellectual, and creative faculties and all of your circuits are turned on and you can actually see and experience the progress you're making, you feel a tremendous sense of fulfillment and joy to your life. Does that make sense? So these are things that we do that are not important and they're not urgent and they don't really have any long or short-term positive consequences to the quality of our life. The next quadrant over is where we do things that are urgent, in our face, demanding our attention, but they're not important. And I call this the quadrant of error. Because this is where we're mistaken. We're erring. We get seduced. We get tricked into doing these things because they're demanding our attention and our focus right now in the moment. They're urgent. And many times what happens to us is because we live in this world of constant stimulation, constant interruptions, constant distractions. Many times what we do is we get tricked into doing something just because we want to get it done. We want completion on it, right? But many times we do that at the expense of something that's more important. See, remember this phrase, doing one thing means not doing everything else. Doing one thing means not doing everything else. You and I can only get control of our life to the degree to which we stop doing things that are no longer of importance. Why? Because there's only so much time throughout the day. There's only 24 hours in a day. And if you decide to react to something and do something that's urgent but it's not really important, that's taking precious vital time away from you where you could be doing something that's results driven. See, many times we react to things. We constantly react and respond because it's constantly in our face. Let me give you an example of doing things that are urgent but they're not really important. Answering emails. Okay, 25 times a day because you want to know what's going on. Answering phone calls that aren't scheduled. Responding to interruptions, distractions, text messages, instant messaging alert. Anything that you react to that's breaking your flow and creativity, and it's distracting your focus and concentration from what you really should be focused on, that's goal achieving, that's results driven, is an urgent activity. And so the only way that we're going to get control of our life is to discover, in a moment I'm going to have you do this, what are the things that are urgent but they're not really important. And some people say to me all the time, yeah, but Matt, my job. Okay, I have to respond. I have to react. I have to, it's my job. It's what I'm paid to do. I understand that, but there's better strategies. There's better ways that you can kind of schedule your time and block off that time so that you're single-handedly focused on one activity. See, don't you find that when you're just focused on one activity, when you schedule time to make calls back at the end of the day, or you schedule time just to create or to plan or do those things, you're more productive? Because your brain is just focused and concentrated on that one activity. Does that make sense? See, many times we spend too much time here because we're saying yes too often. See, whenever you feel like you're reacting, when you have all these demands being placed on you and people are interrupting you and you're constantly reacting and responding, you're going to feel out of control. And if we feel out of control, is that going to affect our productivity, yes or no? Not only if we feel out of control, what emotion are we going to feel? You guessed it, stressed. And we feel stressed, and we feel stressed because we're spending too much time reacting. So we want to stop reacting. We want to be clear on what those things are so we can stop doing them and reallocate our time to this quadrant right here, which I'll show you in a minute, so we can start doing things of higher productivity and higher fulfillment. So the next quadrant over is this. This is where we do things that are now urgent and important. These are things that are now urgent and important. I call this, the quadrant of essential. Because these are activities that have significant consequences, positive consequences to the quality of our business and our life, and now they must be done. There is a deadline right around the corner, and we have to get this done. This is where a lot of people feel high degrees of stress and anxiety because they waited too long. They waited too long. They were either spending too much time here or spending too much time reacting, and now they're under the gun. There's a deadline. They have to get this done. These are things that are critical to getting the deal, critical to earning the revenue, to making the sale. These things have to get done right now, but the reason is because we spent too much time here. Remember what I said, doing one thing means not doing everything else. We only can get control of our day if we understand where we're spending our time. But the reason we're under the gun, the reason we're spending time right here doing things now that are urgent and important is because we didn't spend enough time here in what I call the quadrant of the extraordinary. This is where you're doing things that are important, but they're not urgent. You have time to breathe. You have time. These are things like planning. These are growth-related activities. These are things that you do in advance that can have significant positive long and short-term consequences to the quality of your life. These are things like personal planning, spending time with your family, exercising every single day. You know, you have time to breathe. Does this make sense? Can you see how these different quadrants really reveal to us where we're spending our time? So what I want to do right now is I want to ask you some questions. I want to give you an idea so you can be clear on where are you spending your time right now. So question number one is this. Let me ask you this question. How much time do you spend in each quadrant? How much time do you spend in each quadrant? And question number two is this. What specifically are you doing in each quadrant? See, I can tell you, if you're bored right now or you're not fulfilled, I'll guarantee you it's because you're spending a lot of time escaping. You're spending a disproportionate amount of your time escaping rather than doing things that are active, where you're actively engaged. If you're not producing at the level that you want, I guarantee it's because you're spending a lot of time here. You're reacting, you're responding, so at the end of the day, you've moved a lot, you're busy, but you haven't really achieved anything of significance or importance. Or are you under a lot of stress? Are you constantly under the gun? Are you constantly in stress because you have deadlines right around the corner that have to get done? Or do you live a life of mastery? Do you have time to breathe? Are you relaxed? Do you have time to breathe? Are you a diligent, vigilant planner, strategizing? Are you constantly doing things that are of higher value, doing high growth related activities? Are you constantly creating? Can you see how this controls the quality of our life? And I want you, the third question is this. Remember, the three questions were, how much time do I spend in each quadrant? What specifically are you doing in each quadrant? And write this question down, or just remember, what could I do instead? See, what I've learned years ago is this, is that you and I, we can't stop doing something. We got to start doing something else that's more fulfilling and rewarding. So what could you do instead? And how could you reallocate most of your time right here? Doing things that are important to the quality of your life, but they're not urgent yet. You have time to breathe. See, can you see now how, by understanding this, it'll give you control? It'll make you more effective at what you do? Does that make sense to you? So now that you understand this, so now that we have control over our time, and really over our life, the real question is this: how do we take control of our communication? How do we take control of our persuasiveness, our ability to influence and lead other people? And that ties in to what I want to talk about next, which is the communication model. Hey, I have a question for you. Why don't people do what we want them to do? If we're in sales, why don't our customers buy more? If we're a leader, why don't people conspire to our vision? If we're a single person, why doesn't that person say yes to a date? And the reason is because you're obnoxious. No, I'm just kidding. There's actually 3 reasons why people don't do what we want them to do. Number 1 is they lack curiosity. Reason number 2 is they lack interest. And reason number 3 is they lack trust. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how you can build these feelings inside people very quickly so that they say yes more often, so that they say yes more continuously, so that you create friends and clients and customers for life, because you're able to be persuasive and influential with your ability to communicate with other people. You literally will become almost a magician with your communication. It's going to be a very hands-on, exciting, powerful training. Be on the lookout for that in the next day or two. Check your inbox. And by the way, please feel free to leave your posts, your comments. Like me. Everybody likes to be liked. Let me know what you thought of this video training. I hope you really enjoyed it. And always remember to live and love every moment of your life, my friend, with joy and enthusiasm. I'll see you soon. God bless.